Welcome to ReserveConnect Forums. From the Reserve Organization of America, the voice of the National Guard and Reserve. ROA is your advocate on Capitol Hill, in the Pentagon, and in communities across America, empowering our reserve force and families to thrive. Every second Tuesday, ReserveConnect Forums connect Reserve Component service members, veterans, and their families with experts, resources, and real solutions, covering employment, health and fitness, family life, education, and the national security issues that matter most. We know the life of America's Reserve, and we're glad you're here. Let's get started.
All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our July edition of our ReserveConnect webinar series on international programs. I'm Steve Minyard. I will be partly your host today, but not your MC for our journey today through ROA's international programs. So ROA has been around for a little over 100 years, formed in 1922, and those of you that are familiar with ROA probably know us for our very strong advocacy. ROA was a huge champion of getting things like drill pay for the first couple of decades of the reserve components. It was a purely voluntary organization. ROA championed that, got that through Congress back in the 1950s. TRICARE Reserve Select, many of the benefits that we have today, like IDT travel. ROA has been a champion for that. What is probably also as well known out there in the universe of the reserve component is our law library. We have a massive law library on USARA and reemployment rights, written in many cases by the very authors of that law during the Clinton administration. But what you may not know or be as familiar with are the programs that ROA champions around the world, particularly in South America and Europe, that bridge connections between the reserve cohort of officers and non-commissioned officers, really the full reserve component here in the United States, with those of other countries. And that is what we are going to be talking about today. So a couple of ground rules, just going through how we run these webinars. We are recording this. We're going to be hanging it on YouTube. It'll be available through ReserveConnect on ROA's website. A couple of other different places. You'll very likely see it chopped up and show up on our social media feed too. So always appreciate the likes and shares of those. So be aware of the fact that if you have a camera and you turn it on, that will be forever. Nothing disappears on the internet on YouTube. So just be cognizant of that. If you have any questions as we're running through all of our briefers, please enter those into the chat window. We'll curate those, go through those. If we have time, we very much hope that we do pick a couple of questions. And if we run out of those, then raise your hand and we'll bring you in live, hand you over to the mic and answer any and all questions that you have on our international programs. If there are any questions that we can't get to, we will take those and we'll answer them. We'll push them out. We've got, I believe, everybody's email if you registered in here as well. So we'll let you know what issues are out there, and it may be something that prompts us to take action up here at ROA, which is very cool on how we operate. We're a very dynamic organization. So with that, I'm going to hand over the mic over to our MC today, our Executive Director, Major General Retired John Hashem. John, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. I appreciate it. And welcome everyone to this webinar on ROA's international programs. I think we have a little issue with our next MC coming in here, our Director of International Programs. So I'm going to cover down on all his comments as well. We don't have a lot of time for this. We want to keep the time short, but I just want to give you an overview of, this is not an in-depth introduction to our programs. This is simply to get folks energized and get the information to you on what these programs are, what they're all about, a little bit of a user experience and how you become involved. And the biggest way you get involved is jump in with the folks that you'll see talking tonight And also go onto our website at roa.org, and you can go into our international programs area and you can sign up and see the things that we're doing. So we love to get participation in these programs. So why ROA? Why is ROA doing these types of programs that are NATO or in South America? Simply because these organizations, this is a NATO adjacent piece that you'll see for the CIOR and CIOMR and CISOR if we're able to talk about that today. And we are named a National Military Association from the Department of War to conduct these programs and exercises with our multinational counterparts. We're basically, as Steve said up front, we're congressionally chartered, but we're seen to run these organizations, and these are for professional development, interoperability, and building long-term relationships across NATO and across South America. So when something happens, we don't see our faces for the first time. We've worked together. We've had an opportunity to plan together in an adjacent time frame or adjacent area where we're not actually doing the military planning and things, but we're doing those things that keep us abreast of all organizations, bringing together reserve organizations across the world, and the ability to participate and do wonderful things across our reserve components. So that's kind of what we'll go through tonight. And I see Jim Sweeney is on, so I'm going to introduce our Director of International Programs, one of our past presidents and um, uh, local judge, Jim Sweeney. Please, Jim.
Thank you. Sorry, I had some technical difficulties, but I do want to thank three groups here. First of all, ROA and its staff, especially John and Steve, for pulling this all together. Secondly, the presenters, who I will talk more about here shortly, and then the participants. So we hope that you find this edifying, interesting, and informative. John, are my slides going to come up or?
Yep,
Yes.
we got them right here. And there we go.
Okay, so I think I heard that there was some talk about both CIOR, CIOMR, CISOR on the NATO side, and then UPORFA on the South American side. So you can go to the next slide, please. And I'd like to just start with an overview of ROA and its role in international programs, with more in-depth information coming from the subsequent presenters, to include from the Department of War, from CIOR, from CIOMR, and then from UPORFA. So ROA, as you know, was established in 1922. As John just said, is chartered by Congress to advise Congress on matters of national security, and then, of course, to represent all reservists. And CIOR, CIOMR were established in 1948, and ROA joined them in 1958. CIOR has some 32 members, NATO members, and then 3 or 4 partners. It was recognized by NATO in MC 248 as the representative of NATO reserves, making recommendations to the Military Committee on organization, utilization, and training of NATO's reserves. Now, DoD back then, now Department of War, viewed participation in CIOR, CIOMR, etc., with ROA as the U.S. delegate to CIOR, CIOMR, as both contributory to multinational relations and to providing for professional development and exchanges with NATO. And so that's why they supported ROA. And if you look at the right side of this slide here, right above your UPORFA there, you can see that it's the National Reserve Associations, and they have to be designated by the Constitution and bylaws of CIOR, CIOMR, CISOR as the national representative. And ROA is that for CIOR and CIOMR. We are working on CISOR at this time. However, as you can see there are MOUs that were entered into in 2023 between CIOR and CIOMR and CISOR. And via that MOU with CISOR, even though we are not yet the member, we can participate. ROA members can participate in CISOR events, which is the Organization for Non-Commissioned Officers, via that MOU. Now, up until the 80s, the Reserve Forces and related policy matters were considered a national issue. And so in 1981, the National Reserve Forces Committee, NRFC, it was founded as an Interallied and Joint Committee, which was recognized as a NATO Advisory Committee in 1996. And as stated in the military committee documents. And so for some of you may remember 441-2, and that was the original NATO framework policy for reserves. And then there was 392-1, which was the military committee directive on the National Reserve Forces Committee. And this became the NATO Committee on Reserves, as you can see now at the top of this slide on the left, via MC 441-3, which was entered into in 2024. It was staffed through CIOR, so we had good input on that. And it is a holistic policy on reserves. And so what that allowed us to do is to get rid of the MOU that we previously had between CIOR and NCR. And NCR, now we have the working groups in between there, and with CIOR as the coordinator for the other AROs, the advocate reserve organizations. And you can see where all those inputs are there. It was a way of formalizing the role of the NCR as the principal advisory body to the military committee on the topic of reserve forces and establishing the NATO vision for reserves. And you may wonder, who are these people that are going to follow me? And so these are the representatives right now, subject to correction when they get on, of the international program. So Captain Bob Carmack is the current head of delegation. He will be turning over to Colonel Judy Davenport here at the Summer Congress in Bucharest. The ASG is Pete Powell, Lieutenant Colonel. CIOMR VP is Colonel Pete Olson, who will be turning over at the Summer Congress as well. And then his XO is Colonel Jennifer Carver. UPORFA, the Chief of Delegation, is Brigadier General Irene Zappi. And I think the presenter tonight will be the ASG Colonel Nicola Nikki Buxman. And then, again, we're not a member of CISOR, so this is the international, those are the international heads of those of CISOR. So how can you get involved? Well, the soonest thing is the Summer Congress. Here's the information for that. And by the way, all further information can be found on the ROA website, to include the ROA International Programs. The Summer Congress is August 3rd through the 7th. You can see the amount, the 560 for a delegate, 250 for a what we call, well, this would be spouses or whatever, but they are, or anybody, I guess, who's not a delegate, can be these delegates at large. Principally, it's determined by the head of delegation. Now, there are official members, for example, members of the council. So that would be, again, the VPs and the ASGs. And then you have committee members, and those are all determined and approved by the head of delegation, the VP. Now, there's some input from the services on those. The delegates at large are pretty much anybody. We will be meeting in Buenos Aires for the UPORFA, and that's September 2nd through the 5th in 2026. It's the 30-year anniversary there. We just had the 75th anniversary of CIOR, CIOMR, and the 100th anniversary of ROA. So that's it, and that's my time as well. So I think I timed it pretty well. But again, there will be further information. This is just kind of the overview, and now we'll get into the nitty-gritty, starting with Major General Dornhofer.
Okay, super. Well, good evening and greetings from the Pentagon, everyone. Major General Vanessa Dornhofer here. I am currently working under the Assistant Secretary of War for Manpower and Reserve Affairs. I'm currently dual-hatted in my role as Principal Director of our Reserve Integration, and also, very proud to serve as the Military Executive of the Reserve Forces Policy Board. I think most importantly here is I'm also a proud alum of CIOR myself, and had the opportunity as a lieutenant colonel and colonel to serve several years as a committee chair with CIOR. So I know what CIOR can be and what our service members can get out of that. The way I frame my comments this evening is really to get after where the Department of War stands on our international programs, and I definitely want to be available for any questions that anyone has. The way I frame my remarks this evening is to focus on three areas. One, to be really clear about the Department of War priorities. Two, kind of how we're organized within reserve integration and how we get after the international reserve programs. And then three, a little bit of leadership and expectations about kind of what we expect from the Department of War of our currently serving members that are connected to any of our international reserve programs. So I'm thrilled to be here. Again, thank you for the invitation, and I'll deep dive real quick. I'll be short, but kind of hard hitting, because I think everybody is aware of how much has changed when it comes to how we are engaging with NATO. What I will tell you from a Department of War perspective, and when it comes to priorities, it's very clearly defined in our NDS, which is two areas: strategic deterrence and burden sharing. If you remember nothing from what I've said, everything that we do in these international programs should be under those two different priorities. So again, strategic deterrence and burden sharing. When it comes to our discussions with NATO and just coming out of the NATO summit, the requirement here, there's a lot of rhetoric out there, but I think what's important and what everybody slapped the table on coming out of this NATO summit was that the global security demands out there right now are demanding our allies in Europe to build a high level of readiness across their forces, and particularly in their reserve component. And this is really where these international programs come at play. I think you've all heard the Secretary of War. He's been very specific and very, laser focused on warfighter readiness. So everything that we do with these international programs has got to be laser focused on what we're doing for the warfighter. With that said, that you'll be hearing a lot more about kind of large scale mobilization and the role of the reserve component in large scale mobilization. And this is where we can be really effective, both within what ROA provides to CIOR and then where we come at play with our international program. So if you want to hit the next slide, that's really getting kind of the bottom line up front. This is about return for us in the department. This is about anytime we pay for one of our service members to participate in any international reserve program, it's got to be about return on investment for our warfighters. With that said, this is really how we're organized, and this is how, there's two kind of lines of which I'll refer to on the slide, and I really want to thank Jim for his introduction, because he did a remarkable job on kind of sharing the background. But when it comes to how we execute kind of policy, there's two lines here, which is from a NATO policy perspective. We've got our U.S. delegation, our formal U.S. delegation to the NCR, which is the NATO Committee on the Reserve, that is a direct report to the military committee. We've got a head of delegation for the U.S. that is currently a two-star Navy SEAL, a Navy Admiral who is supported by, actually in my office today, is Marine Colonel Rob Bell. Those two members are our official delegation to the NCR. What I would tell you of having had some experience with both organizations, NCR and CIOR, these two organizations are highly complementary in what they do for the military committee. So just to highlight a couple, in terms of what our U.S. delegation does on a regular basis is really pushing the U.S. agenda, within the NCR, and making sure that the Secretary of War across the ministries of defense at NATO really understand where we're coming from, which gets after what I mentioned in the priorities. So that is really the policy lane. On the flip side, from an ARO perspective, which is what we call CIOR, which is an advocacy reserve organization, which spelled out, Jim, I was thrilled that you mentioned the new NCR. And for those that are highly interested in this, this is a great read on kind of where we are as a reserve, with NATO and the reserve components. And this is where I like to make the correlation of how the Reserve Forces Policy Board works as an independent advisor on policy issues, and they have the ability to have external engagement, very similar to the way ROA does as an advocacy organization. And then you have the kind of head, down and in policymakers on reserve policy. So that's how I'd like to explain the two different policy and then advocacy on both sides of the screen. So let me just wrap up. I don't want to speak too long here, but I think what's really important, and for those, and the reason that we're here is for those that may be interested in kind of the leadership and expectations of what we hope to get out of our service members that participate in these. It comes down to what kind of that bottom line up front. It's the burden sharing, it's interoperability, and then warfighter readiness. I would say there is an expectation of all of us uniform wearers to raise the bar from where we have been in the past. It used to be there were perceptions out there of what these organizations were. I would say, having been part of CIOR, I got some of the best training in some of the exercises that I did. And I think that would be the expectation, is that we continue to get that warfighter readiness, and then translating the spending that we're doing to capacity. And I won't go too far into that, but this is where I'll just leave on this. I'll leave off on saying that what we need in our service members to share with our NATO allies, especially in CIOR, but all the other organizations we'll be talking about tonight, is we need them to bring their operational experience. We need them to bring their U.S. leadership, and we need to let them bring what we have in the reserve component forward to our NATO allies. And that should also translate into that return on investment for the member. So I know that was a lot, and that was probably, as the policy wonk here, a lot of policy speak, but I think it's really important that we get, when we pay for somebody to go and attend these, that they're getting the max out of these opportunities, but also that we're furthering kind of the importance of these organizations that have really stood the test of time. So with that, John, I'll turn it back over to you. But again, I'm thrilled to talk about these and thrilled to answer anybody's questions.
Great. Thanks, General Dornhofer. Really appreciate that, and for taking your time to come in and tell the story. We also appreciate how much the Department of War is engaged into this, and to make it it becomes very important and a very worthwhile experience for our reserve folks. So thanks for that. Hey, let's jump into CIOR. And on the line, we have with us Captain Retired Bob Carmack, who can give us a little bit of information on that. Bob, you out there?
I'm out here. Thank you, John.
All right.
So let's talk about the Interallied Confederation of Reserve Officers. So we, as Colonel Sweeney mentioned earlier, we were founded in 1948. Again, it was established to build, stronger allied military networks, particularly on the reserve side. We became a member in 1958. Currently, we actually have 30 members participating. We've had a few other members, and they're welcome to rejoin. There's always a little bit of some issues with certain countries having multiple reserve associations and who is going to be the one that is designated. So there's a couple countries out there that we're trying to re-engage with, but we have these countries represent well over 1 million reservists. We are politically independent, but we are officially sanctioned by NATO, having been sanctioned in 1976. So we're really the largest military organization of any kind. what we're trying to do with CIOR is we're strengthening the ties between reservists and NATO. We provide cooperation amongst the reserve officers with member nations. We do a lot of best practices sharing when we meet. We do a lot of, we'll get in the committees a little bit later, but there's a lot of training that we provide. As has been mentioned by both Colonel Sweeney and Major General Dornhofer, they focused on the brand new, I will say brand new, it was October of 2024, the new 441.3. And this allows CIOR to actually provide, as an annual report, direct feedback to the chairman of the military committee. We have two advocacy reserve organization partners, which you will hear a little bit more from Colonel Pete Olson on CIOMR. And we also are very connected with CISOR. In fact, we have two meetings a year that we sort of meet jointly. We have a winter meeting that's mostly in Brussels at NATO headquarters in late January, early February. And then the Summer Congress. And this year is going to be in Bucharest, Romania. Our committees, we have the defense and security issues, civil military cooperation, strategic communications, legal committee, military, MILCOM, CIOR, our language academy, the Young Reserve Officer Program, and cyber. So of these committees, we mentioned gaining things from exercise as well. The CIMIC committee does they get together at the Summer Congress and they host an exercise, and that's usually focused on some kind of a local disaster or something like that. The MILCOMP is basically kind of our Olympics, the Reserve Olympics. And there's just a lot of teamwork and camaraderie that's formed amongst those groups. The Language Academy generally meets right before the Summer Congress at whatever location they have. I think this year is going to be in France. And that Language Academy also provides exportable MTTs. And they've been active in different nations, and Ukraine being one of them. The Young Reserve Officer Program, they have the Young Reserve Officer Workshop, YRO, and that's really good, military leadership training that these young officers are getting. So if there's any questions, and if you want to try to participate in CIOR, the U.S. VP's email is down below, usavp@cior.net. And the website to CIOR is cior.net. And just one thing to mention on the Summer Congress in Bucharest, if you have registered or are going to be registering for that, there will be a credit card option to pay. I think originally they came out with just you had to do a wire transfer to get your funds in, but they now have a credit card option. They do charge like a 3.5% admin fee on top of that. But that's it for me. Thanks, John, and thank you everybody for participating in this.
Hey, Bob, thanks a lot. I really appreciate it. Let's move over to Colonel Pete Olson now to talk about the medical side of CIOR, CIOMR. Pete?
Yeah, hey, thanks so much, and thanks everybody for joining. I'll try not to repeat anything that's been said tonight. I just want to help the audience understand why we have a unique medical organization, because of course, as a medical community, we're part of the sustainment world, and you would think that perhaps we'd be part of CIOR. Well, following World War I and World War II, where we learned a lot of lessons as a community, we recognize that any NATO fight going forward, of course, will be multinational. And as a result, the trauma system that supports that fight will be inherently multinational. And there's some significant complications to multinational medical care. Also, the vast majority of the operational medical forces in NATO nations are in the reserve components, including the U.S. And so we just felt like it was important that we had a standalone organization a long time ago, and it's already paid significant dividends. I'm Pete Olson, again, US VP. I'm also the VP Transformation of CIOMR. I've been in that role for about 2 years, and very pleased to be replaced by Lieutenant Colonel Navneet Sahu here at the end of Summer Congress this summer. We also, as Bob mentioned, meet twice a year as a larger group. We have a couple of different programs that happen in conjunction with one another. We have a number of plenary sessions that include content developed by our Military Medicine Committee, but also our Global Health Engagements Committee. Our focus there really is capacity building amongst the allies, because we're thoroughly convinced that burden sharing requires increased capacity over time. We also have 2 developmental programs that we run. One is our Junior Medical Reserve Officer Workshop. And then for the first time ever, we're launching a mid-career officer workshop. A lot of wonderful developmental opportunities for folks that are a little bit later in their career. And these programs run in parallel and sometimes at the same time with our broader programming. If folks are interested in participating, highly encourage to reach out direct to that VP email at the bottom. If you're an actively serving reservist or a guardsman, we do a calling notice in the spring and the fall for the developmental programs. For all others, we can be happy to add you to our mailing list when information comes out about our meetings. We're also always looking for some of the world's experts, that many of whom have strong connections to the reserve components, to come and provide important cutting edge training for our folks. Looking forward to any of your questions, and thanks again for the opportunity to speak tonight.
Great. Thanks a lot, Pete. Really appreciate it. Hey, I want to give a minute to Steve Minyard, since we got CISOR up here, just to give a brief overview of what we're trying to get into and make successful for us. Steve, please. Steve, you're muted.
Of course I'm muted. So hey, as a unmuted former sergeant major who spent most of his career in the Army Reserve, CISOR is an incredible organization that gets me greatly, very much excited being here up at ROA on the ROA staff. So I've got highlighted in red kind of the things that make my heart beat a little faster in reading what CISOR does. You can see here they are an organization focused on reserve NCOs. There aren't very many organizations at all like that. CISOR is. And of course, your advocate for all reserve component NCOs is ROA. They strengthen National Reservist Associations. That is linking ROA with the leadership of all the other reserve organizations that are part of CISOR. We heard earlier Germany, Finland, primarily NATO partners, South Africa, send some folks to some of these competitions as well. So it's an outstanding opportunity to get a joint and combined perspective as a non-commissioned officer. And non-commissioned officers, you'll see all kinds of crazy different ranks, things like warrant officers. They're non-commissioned officers in many NATO countries, starting very, very junior. So it is a tremendous way to broaden your perspective as a non-commissioned officer, and then to train with them as well. So one of the courses that they have is a combat and survival course. Love this, as NCOs do all around the world. We lead the way. You see it right there on their badge. Super, super cool and cool. They run a military competition. I had the privilege of going up to Fort Dix and seeing some Army Reserve Command NCOs running through the only NATO obstacle course on the East Coast up there, getting ready to do that. So NCOs are already enmeshed into this program already. And then, of course, the combat and survival course. You got a picture of some folks throwing a grenade, which again is cool. Somewhere there in Europe. I will say 2 of the largest groups that are really leaning forward in this is the Army Reserve Command, and the former CSM of USARC, CSM Andrew Lombardo, really set the groundwork for this, and it is going on very, very strong with them, as well as the Air Force Reserve. So I've talked with their senior leadership, and they are very, very much involved. They were up there at the CIOR competition training that I went up to at Dix. But we're very much looking forward to bringing over other NCOs into this. And as was mentioned before, the United States is not a full member of CISOR, but we are working on that, working through our colleagues, my former employer up at MNRA, and getting some of the paperwork ready and working through the widgets so that we can hopefully become full members. And with that, well, I'll just say the countries that are full members, their NCOs are considered as vice presidents. They sit on a council and they actually have a leadership position within the organization. So great opportunity, great way to get plugged in and broaden your perspective as a non-commissioned officer. And kudos to the NCOs that are already leading the way in this. Hoa.
Yeah, I
Hoa.
really appreciate it. That's great. And Steve's taken a really big task on himself to get this rolling up for ROA and all the reserve components. So thanks on that. Hey, let's move over to UPORFA. And we have Colonel Nikki Buxman on. Nikki, please. Nikki, we can't hear you.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Look at that.
Okay.
Yay.
Welcome.
I've just been having a really hard time with technology today. So I'm Colonel Nicola Buxman. I go by Nikki. I'm representing UPORFA tonight. General Zoppi couldn't make it. UPORFA is a 30-year coalition of different reserve organizations that get together. And we're a very small event as compared to CIOR. So UPORFA plays a unique and strategic role in the Western Hemisphere. It brings together reserve officers from across the Americas to strengthen professional military relationships, deepen interoperability, and build the kind of trust that only comes from sustained engagement. In a region where partnerships matter as much as capabilities, UPORFA helps create the networks that keep our hemisphere secure, stable, and connected. This focus on hemispheric partnership in turn directly supports the United States Southern Command's strategic objectives. Its focus on collaboration, civil military cooperation, and shared democratic values aligns with Southcom's priorities of strengthening partnerships, countering threats, and promoting regional resilience. Every Congress, every seminar, and exchange reinforces the people-to-people ties that make Southcom's mission possible. And this value isn't just one-sided. Our partner nations place a tremendous importance on these events. For many of them, UPORFA is one of the few hemispheric forums where reserve forces can engage as equals. They share operational lessons and build professional networks that last well beyond the Congress. Their consistent participation, often at senior levels with full support from their active duty general staff, shows how much value they place on strengthening these relationships and contributing to a shared vision of regional stability. I've seen this firsthand. I first got involved almost by accident by supporting the U.S. delegation as a participant. What started out as just curiosity and a way to travel turned in one of the most professionally rewarding opportunities in my career. I gained real multinational planning experience, strengthened my understanding of partner nation reserve structures, and brought those insights directly back to my U.S. Army Reserve performance. It made me better at my job, and it expanded the way I think about the reserve's role in the Western Hemisphere. The benefits of attendance went far beyond professional development. I pushed myself to learn Spanish, and although I'm not a fluent speaker, my efforts opened up doors I never expected. Last night, as a non-native speaker that can barely speak Spanish, I was taking notes during one of the IPRs in Spanish. So that gives you an idea. I mean, I kind of know what they're talking about, but it was in Spanish. I've built lifelong friendships with officers from across the region, people I still talk to, I collaborate with, and support as they develop their own reserve force initiatives. Those relationships are the real strength of UPORFA. On top of professional opportunity and friendships, there's another dimension to these gatherings. It's not just work, it's fun. It's actually a lot of fun. These events are welcoming and energizing. There is often fun activities for family and friends. We often do trips together afterwards. There's ad hoc trips, add-ons, all sorts of things that kind of go along with it. We often meet these people in the States when they come in to see us. They come back and forth pretty often. Our partner nations take pride in hosting, and they make sure everyone feels included when we do have it down there. So considering all of this, I have one simple call to action. Join us. Our registration is open now. You can get your tickets to go down to Buenos Aires. But whether you're an active reservist, a retiree, a speaker, or someone who simply wants to contribute your experience, UPORFA needs voices like yours. Be a part of the team that strengthens our partnerships and represents the United States. and help shape the future of reserve forces across the Western Hemisphere. That's all I got to say. Registration's open, and I can't wait to see you in September.
Hey, thanks a lot, Nikki. That was awesome.
Yep.
And I'll just reiterate what she said. It's professionally rewarding, and you'll find that these events you go to are very welcoming, and it's a wonderful learning opportunity. It's a wonderful professional development, and it's a wonderful way to serve and increase your own personal readiness and ability to serve. So thanks for that. Hey, I wanted to end our speaking portion today with a service experience. And I couldn't think of any service or any better person than Brigadier General Greg Buchanan from the Air Force Reserve. Greg has participated much in CIOR, and I'd have to say that I think the Air Force Reserve now is our number one player across these programs. So, and I think that's large in part to the work that Greg's been doing out there, and of course, things that we're doing here at ROA. So, hey, Greg, I want to turn it over to you. Go ahead, please.
Hey, John, I appreciate the invite. It's good to see Captain Carmack on here as well. I want to first start by saying that for our reservists to participate, they also do have to be ROA members. That's important. It's key. We recognize that that this is an ROA sponsored event. But the Air Force Reserve find great value in this, both for our officers, but also for our allies as well. Especially, I would say, right now in current times and current national security environment, where we're looking at partner nations over in NATO increasing their reserve capacity. Specifically, if you look at France, they're doubling their Air Force Reserve capacity, and that could be said pretty much for all the different NATO countries. So where the Air Force Reserve finds value is, once again, as General Dornhofer talked about, increasing burden sharing. And how do we do that? We make sure that they're trained up. We provide models to our fellow officers that they can then take back to their own countries. Even it could be policy ideas or policy concepts from our legal committee. We've got very robust USARA protections here in the United States. Many of these countries don't have that, and we're more than happy to share with them. And then, of course, also, there's great value for our own officers. In fact, I've been in CIOR for the last 3 years, and we've had seminars on resiliency, national resiliency. It's something that we here in the United States don't think carefully enough about, because we believe that we are secure because we're surrounded by oceans. The threat is real and imminent over there, and we have a lot to learn from them. I went through other seminars on drone warfare, taught by Ukrainian contractors coming from Ukraine, right in the thick of it, and great lessons learned that provides not only to our reservists, but to the total force in the Department of Warfare. And then coming up in Bucharest this summer, another shameless plug, they always have a seminar. One of the seminars this year is on narrative warfare. Think cognitive warfare, a new level of warfare that we don't think up enough about, but our adversaries think a lot about. So we in the Air Force Reserves, we find that, yes, there is great value in these programs. Not only that, on my professional military side, one of my portfolios is the Air Force Reserve Allies and Partners program. This is a formal program. But by using CIOR and CIOMR with our reserve officers, we can develop those informal relationships that had been discussed previously that can serve us well as we might have to come and fight together tonight. So it's a great complementary program. We understand that it's a ROA program, but it complements well with our former Allies and Partners program. In fact, the Air Force Reserve finds this so important and valuable that currently we're sponsoring roughly 8 of the total 20 U.S. delegation positions, and those are both members and observers. And when I say sponsor, the Air Force Reserve is picking up the entire tab for our service members, everything from mandates to per diem to travel. And so you'll find our members on the DefSec committee. Bob had discussed this earlier, CIMIC committee, WIRO, MILCOMP, legal, public affairs, and also on CIOMR, scientific and operational medicine. In fact, we want to get into CISOR. We are so happy that ROA is working towards that. Brought out the Senior Enlisted Leader Chief Nunez and also the Senior Enlisted Army leader as well, who was already mentioned, to see the value of it as we're growing that capacity as well. I'm proud to say that we are probably the most of the active serving force. However, that being said, working with General Dornhofer to determine, hey, how can we get more actively serving Navy, more actively serving Army in the CIOR delegations as well. In fact, I have to give Bob a quick plug there. If you look at the lower right-hand corner, you'll see Captain Carmack, and unfortunately, he's surrounded by a bunch of Air Force Reserve officers and senior enlisted. We had a great time with that. Not only are we part of the committees, but as you already learned, CIOR sponsors military competitions. That's MilComp. Language academies, that's the CLA, and the Young Reserve Officer programs as well. And so the Air Force Reserve sponsors 6 additional airmen to each of those. So actually, I take that back total. So it's 2 to MilComp, 2 to CLA, and 2 to WIRO. Again, it's a chance for us to grow our airmen, give them that international experience, give them that cross-cultural experience, learn different ways of doing business and how to execute. Specifically, I'm on the CIMIC committee and participate in the CIMIC's events. And there's a lot to learn from our partner nations to make us and our own country stronger through that. And then most recently, I'm proud to say there was a midwinter conference for CIOR, CISOR, and CIOMR. And there was about 5 or 6 Air Force reservists that were heavy hitters that working along with the VP of the delegation, Captain Carmack, put together, I thought was a pretty amazing conference as we're pushing forward. So I'm proud to consider myself an ROA member. I'm proud of our Air Force Reserve contribution, and the ROA sponsor of this is making a definite impact of strengthening the reserve forces, not only in the United States and giving us that education, that warfighter experience that we need internationally, but then also helping our partner nations overseas build and increase their capacity and providing them the ability to burden share as we're facing an uncertain future in our national security environment. And I very most definitely appreciate the opportunity to come and provide you a service perspective of how the Air Force Reserve values these international programs that ROA provides.
Thanks a lot, Greg. I really appreciate it. That's awesome. Hey, I was looking down in the chat and a lot of questions and comments on who pays and how things get done. And as you heard through this, it can be spotty depending on what you do and how you participate. So some of the funding will come direct from the services. Some funding does come direct out of the member's pocket too. So you have to work with our folks pretty hard to figure out what can be paid for and what's not. And I think the more value we provide and working together with General Dornhofer and folks out in the services like General Buchanan, when some of the chiefs see the value or the senior enlisted leaders, they'll put money behind it, and that's a great thing. So it's we've seen some of the chiefs heavily support, and then the next chief comes in and they may not support it as much. So it depends on priorities of the service, priorities of the department at the time on how we get in and do these. But if you look at the items that General Dornhofer briefed up front, what's going to click with the department and get the support behind it. So with that, Jim, I'll ask you if you have any comments to end. But then I want to go into questions too, because I want to go longer if there are questions and people can bow out as they need to. So Jim, please, if you have any wrap up.
Well, I would just like to thank ROA for pulling this together. Thank all of the speakers, thank all the participants. As I started out by saying, hopefully you will have found this to be informative and edifying and a call to get involved for all the great reasons that all the speakers laid forth for you. And it's really, really great to see so many people on here And again, look forward to seeing you all either in Bucharest or Buenos Aires or someplace thereafter. So thank you.
Great. And I'll take an opportunity to thank Bob Carmack and Pete Olson, because I know you both are hanging up the reins there on things. And during your time doing things, we've moved in wonderful directions, and we're always moving forward. And I'll introduce no stranger to most of us here, Judy Davenport, who will be taking over for Bob with CIOR, and she'll be at the conference coming up. So thanks, Judy, for that. And I will open it up to questions. We will stay on. You just have to gauge it if the person you're asking the question is able to stay on or not. So please raise your hand if you have anything for any of the speakers or us.
Hey,
Yep.
John.
Yes.
Hey, Vanessa here. Hey, just one thing that I didn't mention in my comments, and I think it just shows kind of where the department is. You know, I was just approved to attend the CIOR Congress in Bucharest. As you know, this is kind of in our oversight role of policy and making sure that that the programs out there are kind of in line. But it's a huge opportunity for both ROA and CIOR. I'm thrilled that I get to get back out there and kind of see where I left CIOR many years ago, but from everything I've heard from Greg. Greg Buchanan, who spoke earlier, that just great things are happening, and I can't wait to get out there, witness it for myself, so I can bring those lessons learned back. And hopefully, to your point, I think the more that we kind of share those stories and kind of the impact that these organizations can make, the more our RC chiefs will be more willing to support and funding, obviously tied directly to warfighter readiness. I think you understand that, and so does the team online. But I'm just thrilled that I'll get to be part of that here in a couple weeks. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Vanessa. That's great. We got Zachary Cunningham. Go ahead.
I'm Captain Zachary Cunningham. I'm actually fortunate enough. I did attend JMRO and CIOMR previously as a medical officer back in Greece. Fantastic program as an operations officer. Learned a lot to work with other nations that I really was not aware of leading into that. The question I have is, since then I've transferred over to Civil Affairs branch now. I'll be attending the CIMIC this year. I wanted to see if anyone had an understanding and expectation of going into CIMIC. What should I expect kind of coming into Romania for that? There hasn't been much guidance coming down other than an MOI. And I was kind of interested in that based on this conversation.
Hey, Zach, I'll be there at CIMIC as well. So if you want to shoot me email and get my contact information, we can talk more offline about it.
Good copy. Thank you, sir.
I couldn't get my hand up, but hey, Zach, Steve Patterson. We did send an officer out of OCAR staff about 3 years ago to CIMIC. He's still in the system as an AGR officer. If I can dig up his current email and get the correct spelling of his name, I'll forward it to you. But he attended CIMIC and can give you some good feedback. Over.
Yeah, in fact, Major General Dornhofer started her career in CIMIC. So you got two, I've been in CIMIC for 2 years, two CIMIC experts. We can talk to you about that. Hey, really quick, only because I don't know how to raise my hand and I've got to get moving here in a couple of minutes. First to Nikki, I want to talk to you offline. I love that we're doing this webinar. I think the Air Force Reserve Command needs to look at that organization as well. So I cannot make any promises, but especially as we're looking at shifting our warfighting focus, Southcom AOR is definitely a hotspot that we need to look at, and how do we get reserve officers in there and potentially sponsored. So we'll work on that. The other thing I want to say really quick, which I forgot to leave out, is for all those that are interested specifically in CIOR, it's a great time to be part of the organization. CIOR understands the imminent threat that Europe is facing right now, and they're becoming more and more warfighter focused. It happened with the last leadership, and as they're transferring their international leadership over the new leadership, I'm expecting that focus to remain the same. So there's a lot more work, especially with the new regulation, NATO regulation that came out with coordinating of how we can provide more reserve-focused capacity to NATO. So it's a great time to be involved in CIOR.
Thanks, Greg. I see Deanna DeToro has her hand up.
So thanks for that. Thanks also to all of our speakers. Very informative. I am about to head to NATO Defense College as a student, and unfortunately, this is the last year that the Marine Corps Reserve, at least for a while, is participating in that. So happy to take either here or offline any recommendations for how I can best, bring value not only to the class, but ways that I can bring value back to the Marine Corps Reserve from that attendance. Especially in light of the fact that they're not continuing our participation in the following year.
Yeah, so anyone want to jump in on that? I'm sure you'll get plenty of folks will give you some great advice. Go ahead, Vanessa.
Hey, no, I just offer, if you have the time before you go off to school, I'd love to connect you with Marine Corps Colonel Rob Bell, who's in our office, and myself, just to kind of give you some atmospherics as well. We'd be happy to do that to get you set up for school, and also just to make sure you've got something on the backside that can, hopefully that is, it's constantly being evaluated. Right now we are doing evaluation of our schools and things like that, but your participation right now is critical. And so we'd be happy to kind of get you spun up before you get to school.
Yeah, I would love that, ma'am. I'm also on the policy board, and so thanks again for your
super,
briefing.
Super. Well, yeah, you know how to reach me then, so it'd be awesome.
Yeah. All right, thanks. Thank you.
Oh,
great. Well, seeing no more hands up, I'm going to thank everyone for attending, and we'll probably deep dive in each of these further in the near future after they go through their summer meetings and conferences. And I will hand things back over to Steve Minyard to wrap us up formally. Go ahead, Steve.
cool. All right. Hey, just a reminder, we're going to be posting this on YouTube. We're going to hand it over to our marketing folks to polish it up a little bit and send it up. But outstanding conversation. We really appreciate everybody that registered coming in. If you have any feedback for us, please send it over to us. This is only our second webinar. We intend on going forward every second Tuesday. In August, we're doing 2 of these. We're actually doing one at lunchtime and at noon Eastern and 7 Eastern on transition. So transition, all encompassing specifically from the reserve component. If you're on active duty, hey, you've got TAP. There is very little structure to transitioning out of the reserve component. If you're retiring, we're going to talk policy gaps. I'm going to have some of our industry partners coming in, people that are in the transition space, for an hour, and then we're going to open it up for a full half hour to hear some discussion and input on what we can be putting in to a reserve transition course that we're building up here in ROA. We'll have already been moving out smartly on building that, but we'll want to get feedback from the field on what we're missing. Since we're sitting here in DC and are a little bit out of the fight, certainly I am as a retiree. So looking forward to that. We will send out a link on social media once it's up on YouTube. I would say just share this with folks. Point them into the direction that they need to and where they want to engage. Run it up through the flagpole, through your chains of command if you are interested in any of these programs, and feel free to reach out to any of us here at ROA. We've got the contact information for all the speakers. I'm sure they'd be happy to talk to you. This is what reserve component community looks like. So this is awesome. Great discussion, great connections. Share this, and we will see you in August, if not before, and any of the other things that we've got going on here at ROA. And with that, we will see you outside, as we say, at drill, annual training, or anywhere on the front lines of national security. Hoa. All right, y'all have a wonderful evening. Thank you,
Thanks,
everybody.
everyone.
Hoa.